Hello and welcome to Reanimated. This is the podcast about all things zombie and undead. We are very pleased to be back after a week and a half so that we could have a fresh, semi-hot take on the Season 10 quote-unquote finale, Episode 16 of Season 10 of The Walking Dead Prime. Very hyped. Much anticipation about this Season 10 quote-unquote finale. I keep saying that because there's 6 more episodes coming out. And with me is H.A. Conrad in New York. Hello.
Hello.
So we don't have a lot of news today, but we have some. And we can also do a little bit of a COVID update because I hear things about Brooklyn and Queens. H.A., what's up?
Well, before we get into that, I think we should discuss how the West Wing is now totally infected with COVID. And, I keep hearing people talk about karma. And I think Trevor Noah said it best when he said, no, it's not karma, it's consequences. And, this is a group of people that have not taken any of these precautions seriously. And, they've traced it back to a couple of gatherings where you see people hugging and in close quarters and inside and no masks. And this has been the behavior. I think my assessment is I'm a little bit surprised that this didn't happen earlier, honestly. But it just keeps the list of people infected keep getting larger. And in fact, it's, I think, one of the largest outbreaks in the DC area. So we will keep an eye on that. But it's pretty interesting to watch how that's being handled or not handled, as the case may be. And here in Brooklyn, yes, we have some hot spots. The mayor has shut down the schools in the areas. He kind of based it on zip code, and then he also wanted to shut down some of the non-essential businesses. Him and Governor Cuomo, this is Mayor de Blasio, him and Governor Cuomo don't get along. Cuomo pushed back and said he can't close down businesses, but then basically has come back and said his plan is almost exactly the same as de Blasio. I kind of wish they would stop having these public pissing contests and just do what they should do and work together on this, because I just don't think there's already a ton of distrust of government and outsiders within these particular communities, because these are the Hasid communities. So if they see sort of public brawling, I don't know that that's helpful in trying to tamp down these outbreaks. But basically what's going on is that there is no mask wearing in a large part with these communities. There was some belief that because they got hit so hard, and they did in the spring, that there's some herd immunity, which there isn't. And they have still, and unfortunately it's also, there's all the really high Jewish holidays have happened. So Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. And one of the things that happened this past weekend was basically they had been told that they shouldn't be doing this big party that they normally do, like a big street party, like hundreds of people. And they ended up doing it. And there's videos of more than hundreds of people. It looks like thousands to me, honestly. And so that is why things are spreading in those communities. There's now been outreach, and they are shutting things down to try to get a hold on it. I hope they do. One of the things I will say, though, is that, we're now back at 25%. The restaurants they're allowing people in, and people are definitely doing it. Not me and not any of the people that I know, honestly. We're all of the same mind, which is we're not going to go and dine inside until there's a vaccine and this thing's over, which is sad, but it's where we're at. But I think that there is a fear that because of the opening up now of these indoor spaces, and specifically the ones like restaurants where the rate of transmission seems to be much higher than in other circumstances. I think we're worried that this outbreak, these little hot spots, as they're calling them, are more than hot spots. And so, I mean, in one area, they're at 17%. In terms of the rate, and basically what the governor and the mayor had said is
rate of positive tests, or
yeah. And I mean, basically sort of the borderline, the sort of measuring stick, they basically, this is why Mayor de Blasio shut down the schools in those areas, is that if there is 3 days in a row where the positive tests are at 3.5% or above, they have to shut it down, because that runs the risk of everything spreading and going back to where we were in the spring. So anyway, knock on wood, send out good thoughts for us, and wear masks, damn it. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
How are things out by your way? You guys had some fires and some crazy stuff happening.
Yeah, just on top of COVID, it's
Yeah.
been on COVID. We're doing better. We've got a 4% elevated case transmission rate, which is good, but we're still on lockdown. The kind of scary thing is if we actually make it into the next zone, the red zone, because California has to do things by colors, then schools are cleared to open on campus, and then I think we're going to have some really difficult conversations and choices to make, because there's a very vocal component of the population who wants to go back to school on campus, and because with all the unknowns with COVID and the effects with the inflammation and Kawasaki syndrome and all this stuff that we don't understand about it, there's no way in hell I'm going to put my kids on the front line willingly. Luckily, our school district has said they're going to do remote learning until December, and they're not pursuing a waiver. But I'm a little worried that when we get our numbers down, which the trends suggest we will, there's going to be a lot more. I mean, because people need to work, and this is the thing. Like I've gone over this before. It's an impossible
situation. Yep.
Yeah, it's just really difficult. Anyway, so on top of that, we've got fires, and that's been the other part.
Yeah.
We've burned 4 million acres. It's bigger than Connecticut or something now. California's been on fire, and it's a design. Yeah. I need this year to end. I need it to rain. We have rain on the forecast for Friday, so bring it on.
Do some rain dances. And the other thing, not to bring it back to COVID, but just to sort of wrap up the sort of current state of affairs. I don't know if you saw the CDC guidelines. Two things happened. One is that they put up the language that they had previously put up and then taken down about airborne transmission, and the fact that yes, indeed, it does happen, and that there's certain ways you can mitigate that, i.e. be outside and, have free flowing air. That definitely helps disperse. But the restaurant scenario makes this particular comment very scary, and I think also is in line with what you were just saying about the schools, which is that, you're talking about indoor instruction where people are in close quarters. And even if you are wearing a mask, there's a possible of transmission. And the other thing that came out was that basically they had been given a hard time about putting out the studies they had done with children. And it's not that kids aren't transmitting it. It's just that there's just differences in ages and, how contagious people can be, or if they're showing symptoms or things like that. And again, there's so much we don't know about this. This is still a relatively new virus. So I hear you. I wouldn't, as I said, I don't have children, but I wouldn't be sending them to school if I did. And especially with all the information that is slowly unfolding, that Kawasaki's syndrome is terrifying to hear about, even if it is only affecting a few kids. I mean, do you want to, that's the thing. Do you run you're kind of like running a lottery, right? There's just sort of you just don't know which kid's going to affect that way. So I just think we're going to have to muddle through, but I hear you. I don't know, man. Though somebody did point out that Mad Max happened in 2021, so maybe we shouldn't be hoping for 21. So
I feel like every year we have this see ya 2019, you were a crap year. And then it's hold my beer.
I know. Yeah. But that said, on the hopeful side, and this is not, and this was the other big thing that the CDC and the FDA put up. So they basically talked about the realistic, and this is not this is not anything new. And it shouldn't be a shock to people. But there had been a lot of rhetoric and a lot of comments thrown around that there would be a vaccine before the election, which I think everybody understood that was false. I hope they did, because there are specific safety precautions in place to make sure the vaccines are safe and that there's also public confidence in them. And a lot of that has to do with the trials and making sure that there isn't some, widespread pattern that might appear with side effects and really detrimental side effects. And then there's a specific timeline they have to follow to make sure that they, that nothing is coming up, like you finish a trial, but then they need to like basically have a few months in between to make sure that it's safe. And basically the FDA has said, yeah, we're still following these guidelines. These are the guidelines we're giving. And there was some pushback on that from the Trump administration. And I just am like, well, no, this is science and this is how it works and you can't rush it. And I will say that even though this is a slightly faster timeline than they had originally thought, it's still kind of in line with what they had been saying all along. And that this goes for every single company that has, a horse in this race. So I think looks, and then again, we still don't know about the sort of efficiency of these vaccines. So they could be only at 50% in terms of giving you protection, which means you might get a milder form of this. This is similar, the match might not be exactly right compared to what the actual virus is. So, you're looking at, for example, when the flu vaccine does not work, or I'm meaning not work, when it doesn't match up quite as well, you still have some protection, but you might get sort of some of it, so you might get a milder version of it, which is still better than nothing. And maybe in this case, it means less of a mortality rate, but it's still, it still remains to be seen what the matchup is going to be and what the level of protection it can give. So they were all saying that they're hopeful that it's at least 50%. So let's hope it's more than that. But, that's sort of one of those things that I think we're going to, and then of course, you and I have talked about this, when do you actually take it? When do people feel comfortable taking it? Because it feels like there's been a lot of rush with this, which is also why I think the FDA was like, yeah, we're going to slow this down a little bit because we need to put all of these safety precautions in place. So
speaking of, have you seen Utopia on Amazon Prime?
So I have seen tons of ads for it. Obviously, I am probably in their in their sites, given my particular consuming habits of these kind of things. I have not watched it yet.
It's another one of these overly prescient shows. And I do recommend it. It's just really brutal.
Yeah, and I've heard this, and so that's part of why I just haven't been... I haven't been quite in the state of mind to watch it recently, so I think that I've been stressed on a lot of different levels. Truthfully, I have been rewatching Fringe, which that's what I've been doing.
A little easier to stomach. Some alternate realities, alternate dimensions.
Yeah, definitely. So anyway, that's what I've been doing. But it's on my list. I just have to basically be in the right frame of mind to do it.
Yeah.
Well, so let's get into some news and then let's talk about this finale.
Yeah. So this is, I think, good news. Bloody Disgusting reported, well, I'm sure that PBS also had something to say about it. But PBS is coming out with a series of a special at the end of October, but there's basically a whole series on zombies in October, which we shouldn't be surprised at, but I am a little bit surprised, and pleasantly so, that it's coming on PBS, a network / producer that I respect. So I'm excited to watch all four of these, basically. October 14th, it's going to be The Origins of the Zombie from Haiti to the U.S. Yes.
Woohoo!
Sign me up. Then How the Night of the Living Dead Changed Zombies Forever. Yeah. Let's talk about George Romero for days. And then, and that's on the 21st.
Forever.
That's on the 21st. On the 28th, Why Modern Day Zombies Are So Terrifying. And so, yeah, we'll probably talk a little bit about Zack Snyder and all the other zombie stuff that's come out, or, in games and books and movies. Yep. And then finally, the finale is October 30th, Exhumed, A History of Zombies. And so I totally want to watch all of these, and I kind of think that this is probably some good fodder for us to chat about, too.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I am on board. I was very excited to see this, that this was coming out. So, and also just in time for Halloween. Woohoo! And then in other news, and this loops in quite nicely to our finale, but basically we've talked about this before, but there seems to be a proliferation of zombie films coming out of South Korea. But not just zombie films, other films too. And I think that this is a great thing to happen, and I think it's very interesting that it has. I'm not sure of all of the reasons exactly, but, I do think that zombie films specifically are a way to voice some political feelings, and I think even with Parasite, that definitely, and that director makes no bones about what he's trying to do, but Train to Busan and all this other stuff, Kingdom, they're definitely coming out with stuff. But in this specific article, they talk directly to Angela Kang, who we very much love, and she was saying that when The Walking Dead started airing and her name was all over it, she started getting calls from people because she still has relatives in South Korea, and they're huge fans, but they were already kind of zombie fans. So I just thought that was kind of a cool thing to have that happen, and very cool for her anyway. And this is what are your thoughts about it? I mean, I think they also have, as we were saying, apparently they just have like these amazing dancers and artists who can be zombie extras in every single production. Like really terrifying and convincing zombie extras.
So we are definitely reaping the benefits of this Korean zombie love affair, and so I say more power to them, and I'll keep watching them if they keep making them.
All right. So on to our recap. So this is the much awaited, and remember, we were like so close to watching this when
I can even point to the scene that caused all of the problems, right? As far as the delay, because there is a fair amount of CGI, which is all it was. It was just that's what I'm reading into it. But we waited for 6 or 7 months for this episode, and so it was all because of the stupid COVID.
Yep. But on the bright side, we get to see it now, and one of the things I will say just before jumping into this, well, maybe we should jump into it, and I can throw my thoughts about this later. But I do think that there were definitely difficulties because of post-production, and you can certainly see some of these, and I think they even they clearly had some issues. I don't know if you saw it. I don't know. There's still
for it, dude.
There's still issues. I just think that this was hyped so much that there was no way that it could live up to the expectations.
It wasn't even that they were hyping it. Like I was just like the anticipation. There was no way for them to meet that.
I think they were hyping it to some extent, but not on purpose, more just because there was nothing else to really talk about, and they had to talk about it, and so everybody wanted to know what happened. So they were out there trying to address that, but without giving away too much. But yeah, there was definitely some hyping, at least in my own head, going on.
Yeah. I'm trying to recognize that in myself too. Right. But I'm also remembering our last discussion about episode 15, the way that ended. That episode ended with like major cliffhangers leading us into this episode. I haven't rewatched or like thought about that since, but I can still feel that palpable sense of anticipation that I had then. And I do think actually that the way that this episode begins, there are 1 or 2 disconnects that could entirely be my fault in my own head. And I'd like to point out one of them, probably the biggest one for me, is that when I'm not even remembering people's names. Alden and Aaron got rolled up. Mm-hmm. Remember when they were being really bad at being spies?
Tracking, yep.
Yeah. They got rolled up by several whisperers, and one of them was wearing like a different kind of coat and had a nice gun. And I read so much into that because you never saw their face. Do you remember this?
Right.
And we were like, oh, I was like, maybe that was Connie and she's dressed up like a whisperer and this is how they're going to get her back into the show. But instead, at the beginning of episode 16, they don't even show you that standoff. It's just they're running and fighting, and they're actually kicking all of the Whisperers' asses.
Yeah.
And it's like there was no actual downside to them getting rolled up by the Whisperers, and it's actually just the way that they get kind of introduced to Maggie and whoever the face mask guy is.
The face mask guy, yeah, or girl, as it may be, gal.
She says he's with me, I think.
Oh, okay.
Later on in the episode. Like, super cool character, very mysterious, love it, but it doesn't quite jive with what I thought
on this.
Yeah, in my head, I was like so prepared for some sort of reveal of Connie in that scene.
Right. And what I was thinking about this episode was just in terms of comparing it to other finales, and this is something you and I have talked about. It's always like there's this big, massive standoff, and there's death-defying odds, and there's all the things that the people that we follow, the sort of like have to do to overcome those odds. And I don't know, I just think it's very hard to pull out the stops for every season finale in this way. And I also think that this suffered a little bit from to me, the sort of pinnacle of this season is actually when Alpha is killed by Negan. And to me, that would have, personally, I think that would have made a much better season finale in just even the pacing and how it happened and the big reveal.
Well, as long as that was the end of the Whisperer story, because they've done this before where they don't let the bad faction get killed off and end the story at the end of the season. And if it drags into the next one, then you suffer from Savior syndrome.
Totally. And I understand that, but I'm just saying that in terms of like sort of powerful imagery and storytelling, I felt like that episode trumped this one entirely. But I also understand that you've got these we've got like several different storylines going on. We've got Eugene sort of going for his lady love in a naive and crazy way, with his little merry band. Now with the addition of Princess, whatever her name is. We've got Alden and Aaron. We've got we have basically all these little sort of side stories they're following. And wait, what is the name of the guy that Michonne ran into, the crazy
no idea.
dude?
But yeah,
Virgil is
and
his name.
Finds Connie at the end of the episode. And he just kind of shows up at Oceanside earlier in the episode too, and you're like, oh, he's not gone? That's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, it is kind of a bummer because I don't know.
Because that was like our least favorite episode of the season was the one where he went, where Michonne went out to his island. It was
right, and they do all these flashes, and they're trying to give you like sort of the group banding together, remember, and and this is just the sort of death-defying odds and whatever. I guess just in terms of like ideas that they're doing, their sort of big plan here. When it becomes clear that Lydia can kind of like, their big plan is that they're going to go to this wagon where they've got a sound system set up and they're going to lead the herd away, which, having like sort of a competing noise to compete, like that's going to like drown out all the whisperers. And I'm like, okay, like I'm okay with that. But then when it becomes clear that Lydia is able to sort of pick out whisperers in this thing, it's like, why wouldn't you spend a little bit more time doing that within, the big herd anyway? It seems. Do
you feel like that's a Lydia skill, or is that just that Daryl and the tables get turned so quickly. From our heroes getting their asses kicked by the Whisperers in every altercation that they have, to suddenly the Whisperers do not pose much of a threat at all in this episode, except that we do lose one. We lose actually a few characters on the good side.
But not like
nobody
key that I thought they were gonna. I thought they were gonna top this off with like some big death, and they didn't. But so in any case, so they sort of like set this all up where they have their big plan. They have your main people that you would expect going out to execute said plan, like Carol and Daryl and all that. They do the guts trick again,
a little more safely this time by not putting it on their faces. I think that's like they're drawing the line there.
However, they have like one skin mask, which is like, okay, but wouldn't you be a little more, I don't know. Anyway, but when it becomes clear that, and this is something that I feel like they would already know, like, okay, so the Whisperers are human, and so they do react to pain. How about, shooting some projectiles off the roof, and that would pick off some of them. At least the Whisperers rely on basically no other noises, no other things happening to distract from the fact that they're hurting them all up, right?
Yeah. So there's a few reasons why that isn't, it's like an unrealistic resolution to the problem that they are facing. They're facing one of the biggest herds we've ever seen. The Whisperers are really hard to pick out of these crowds, even when there's just a few zombies and Whisperers. Remember that covered bridge scene where they first meet Lydia? There's like 3 zombies and 4 Whisperers or some, and you can't tell the difference. Like, they all look the same, basically. And so in a crowd like this of thousands and maybe 100,000s of zombies, there's no way you can do this.
Yeah,
and it makes it pretty unrealistic that in the third act, they are just able to pick all the Whisperers out of the crowd and kill them one at a time, and really quickly too.
Right. But my point is that rather than have everybody sort of blockaded into this space, at least have something going on. Like, I mean, I'm not like talking about, I don't know, not like boiled oil off the thing. I want to see real medieval.
They weren't planning on holding this. This was a hiding place, not a fortress, right?
I know, but they
were expecting the walkers to go to Oceanside and then plan. I don't know. The plan was, I guess, to pull them over a cliff from there instead of from here.
Oh, stop ruining my fun with medieval torture things. But anyway, no, I hear what you're saying. But again, so they're going off to the crowd, and let's give them the benefit of the doubt that they are able to actually do this. But you're right. They're somehow able to pick the Whisperers out of the crowd with a lot more ease than we've ever seen them do before. And suddenly the tables are totally turned. This group, this big bad, is suddenly very weak and strange. I
mean, Beta is still terrifying.
Yeah.
But so the another thing that strikes me as a discordant note in this is that the Whisperers, they have this huge army, but they spend 99% of the episode just milling around outside. They send like five Whisperers inside the hospital to go and fight them. Like, how it seems to me that the good guys could have easily stayed there and fought them off, because the zombies don't even come inside the hospital with the Whisperers. There's no massive overwhelming force inside at any point. It's like a strike team of Whisperers who, they're able to overpower Seth Gilliam, aka Father Gabriel, because he's by himself, and they throw one grenade. I don't know.
Yep.
It feels like two of the defenders do get killed, it looks like, but this is not a pitched battle. This is like it's a skirmish, and the whole army is outside just waiting to get led away. So to me, it falls a little flat, and I'm trying to justify the fact that I had a lot of hype in my head for this, but I'm also just like, that was okay. That doesn't feel like you're using, like, the Whisperers have never been ones to avoid using overwhelming force of their secret weapon, which is zombie hordes. And in this case, they just don't use them at all, it seems like.
Right. And then I would say the other main, like, one of the bigger storylines in this, it's kind of what we've seen already, but Lydia initially is left behind, and she and Negan kind of have words, because he's basically, I mean, he he's what he is, and he actually does have genuine concern for Lydia, and he has her mask.
He has her mom's mask.
Her mom's mask. And she basically is like, well, you could still be a hero. And they both go out and they do, some redeeming stuff for them. So for Lydia, she already was on this team, and other people kind of doubted her, but she is on this team, and she has, she has a couple of interactions, one with Negan and one with Carol, where it's basically, she's just like, look, we can choose to be different than what we are. We don't have to sort of define and make these weird definitions and keep sort of, having these bouts of self-flagellation. And then they still have the distrust within some of the people of the group, both against Carol, and Lydia and Negan. And we even have like a very specific, like, they don't do much with it, but Carol has an interaction with somebody from Oceanside that's basically trying to call her out, and she's like, from Kingdom, and she's trying to call her out, and she's like, oh yeah, I know, and just kind of like keeps going. So this is something that we see, they sort of thread this needle for this particular storyline.
What you just described, that interaction between Carol and Diane, who's a B team, but very much a regular, she's the archer lady, and she's like, look, Negan led the zombies to Kingdom. And that basically was like caused the death of many good people. And Carol's just like, yeah, I know, sorry about that. That was crazy. That was a crazy kind of interaction, and I'm not sure how she's supposed to resolve that. And the thing with Lydia is she is still a pariah, and it's Beatrice from Oceanside, and then whatever the Oceanside leader teenager's name is, who are like, yeah, we're not ready to hang out with Lydia. And I'm like, oh, bugger off, you
kind of. It's
xenophobic
annoying.
Oceansiders. It's your fault that Rick's dead in the first place, so why don't you just all chill? Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really hoping that we're going to see some insane reunion scene between Maggie and Negan at some point, because that was also part of why Rick is dead. Was Maggie's insistence on revenge, which clearly 5 years later, I think, I don't know, I'd be interested to see where that goes. However, Lydia is a pariah. Her only real friends are Daryl, who is influential, but it seems like he doesn't really use that influence, and Carol and Negan. And Carol and Negan are also hella pariahs right now because of what they've done.
This is like the pariah club here.
It is. It's like the outcasts. But they're also like the bosses, and I don't mean that like they're in charge. I just mean they're like a bunch of bosses. They're badasses. So I'm curious to see how they're going to resolve this like Lydia saved us thing that Carol is pitching at the end of the episode, with the fact that people think Carol is a terrible person. And, you know, so I don't see Lydia's situation changing, but I felt like at the end of this episode, the show was like, see, Lydia's going to be cool now because Carol said that she saved the day. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, Beatrice being dead is helpful in that regard, because Beatrice was one of the haters.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I think maybe now that there is the threat of the Whisperers is done, I will say that this was the other thing that I don't want to say it troubled me, but you build up Beta to be such a force, and he is scary, and he has been scary, and he's been one of the more interesting characters for so many reasons as part of this particular evil group of people. And you know, I kind of felt like the confrontation that brings him down is it was a little bit of a letdown.
I mean, it is, but it's also the way that they make it not a letdown is he's been having these visions, right? Like the zombies are talking to him and all that, and okay. But by the end of this, in his death scene, they almost make it feel like he is like part zombie because of the way that he goes down into that mob. Yeah. And Negan's looking at it going, oh, dude. Negan is taken aback by it. So I thought that actually helped with
the sense of humor about it. You know, I just liked, you know, remember the fight scene between him and Daryl, where he ends up down the elevator shaft? Like, that to me was amazing. And I know that they can't do all that much here because of time and everything else. But the part of this whole scene that I did like was the ending, when he's kind of his mask is torn away and Negan realizes he's the whatever country star he is. And Daryl's like, he's nobody. Yeah. And it's just like the humor of this, I feel like they hit the right notes on that stuff.
That was good. And I don't even know if that was supposed to be funny so much as maybe it was, but yeah,
I think it
all
was.
These like revelations about how he's famous, and then Daryl, who might not have even known who he was, is just like.
I also, I mean, you know, I just love Negan as a character, but just Jeffrey Dean Morgan just really always brings it, and his appearance, just even his sort of like announcement to Beta that he's there is amazing, and like it just is lovely. And even honestly, his interactions with Lydia, where he's trying to be, you know, he's still Negan, but he's definitely looking out for her against his, you know, he doesn't want to admit to being somewhat of a good guy.
Yeah. Hey, what did you think of Beatrice's death scene, speaking of that? Because it's a little bit complicated. She's paired up with Carol going through the mob, and they run into a Whisperer. She gets stabbed in the leg, and she doesn't scream. I guess she does. Like, the zombies are going after her. And Carol's reaction to that. What did you think about that scene?
I mean, it's kind of like they're in the midst of it, and I don't think Carol's reaction, I mean, I think it's like, you know, there's nothing that she can do about it, and Beatrice basically is still looking out for the mission because she wants her to take the backpack, and Carol can't get to it, so obviously we've got a Lydia moment here where she grabs it, but...
I read a little more into it, like, Carol just kept walking away, even though Beatrice was going, Carol! take this. And Carol's like, just walks away. I mean, maybe that was self-preservation, but...
I think it was self-preservation, but I also think that part of it was if she had somehow gotten involved with it, she would have gotten pulled in, but also if there are whispers around, they're going to see where she is. So I kind of thought that was what it was. But, who knows? It's Carol. So there's a chance she just was like, I'm getting out of here.
Yeah. She had a look on her face that I feel like I've seen when she's doing something selfish and putting other people's lives in danger, which is kind of her MO, certainly this season.
Yeah. There's a few things that I feel like could have made this slightly better. I also feel like Maggie's reappearance was a little lackluster. It's just sort of like suddenly she's there. We didn't get enough of her, and we didn't get enough of an explanation. We have her reading the letter with her masked friend.
All these people are dead.
All these people are dead. We just don't have enough. And granted, again, they're trying to crush a lot into one episode, so we'll probably see more of that later, obviously. But
the episode ends with a pretty big
reveal. Yeah,
reveal, and the actual journey to get there to meet Stephanie doesn't go so well because apparently Eugene can't ride a bike and crashes it in such a way that he actually breaks the bicycle. I'm like, dude, there's no traffic. I don't know what did you hit to bend your wheel.
Right.
So they get to the train yard after sundown. So he's like, oh, that's it. It's not going to work out. There's some funny stuff with Princess, and she does make everybody laugh because she calls him a horny dude. And there's some. She's just going to be a one-liner machine. I feel like this character, and I'm pretty excited for it.
Yeah.
And then the reveal of the stormtroopers.
Yeah.
Is dramatic. I'm curious about why they have to wear white, why they're not trying to blend in with their surroundings. I guess we'll find out. I've never read any of the arc about the Commonwealth, so I'm excited to learn more about them.
Well, and then, again, I just found this whole storyline, like the fact that they're even going out to find this person and the way that they're going out and the way that Eugene was revealing things over the I'm just still bothered by all of that. And I don't really buy that they would actually do that. But okay, they're going to do it. And we're going to talk about whatever this is. Yeah. And then the other part with Virgil finding a very rundown Connie who looks like she's been through the ringer is the other part of the reveal here. And let's see, there was something else.
How much time has passed since the mine cave in? Do we have any idea? Is it more than a day?
I think it is. So she looks, but again, she was in an explosion too, I guess. Maybe that's, and she had to probably dig her way out. So that's probably her state of things. Yeah. And she was also down there with a bunch of walkers. So, there's probably a lot going on in this poor survivor's head. Oh, I know what I was going to say. The whole, where Carol is ultimately saved by Lydia, much like she had saved Lydia before, from committing suicide. Yeah. I mean, again, I think that story arc is going to be, we'll probably see a little bit more of that later on. But I just thought that was a nice little symmetry there where Lydia basically is just like, no.
Honestly, this episode did do a lot for their relationship. The stuff where Lydia's saying to her, I'm not trying to replace my mom with you. This could be something different. I feel like these are really... Carol needs another kid. Not at all, obviously, right? Because everybody she adopts ends up dead, and she just loses her mind a little more.
Well, the other thing I would point out that Lydia's definition of mom is not necessarily the most positive thing. So maybe something a little differently defined would be a positive thing for her.
They should work on some sort of just mentee mentor sort of thing.
Right.
I was not a huge fan of the lemming zombies scene. I felt like there was nothing to me to explain why the zombies would walk off that cliff.
Nope. And also when Carol kind of stops and then when she kind of goes down and her and Lydia just kind of do their own thing, I feel like they would have noticed that too, because they just sort of they notice things that are sort of outside of the herd, basically. And that wasn't explained enough for me. But, I am glad that this episode finally got aired. I definitely would have felt a little differently about it had it been aired in time. But I'm trying to sort of balance what my expectations were, which were huge and probably a little outsized for this. But there's certainly good things in it. I'm glad to see Maggie's back. I like the princess character, and I think that's nice that there's like a new something to at least talk about. So we shall see what happens.
I was a little surprised that the king is still alive at the end of the season. I was convinced that he was going to be worm food because of the cancer, and like 2 episodes ago he was having trouble fighting off walkers. Like his health is on the decline. It'll be it would have been maybe a little nice closure to have him killed off in this season.
Well, but maybe there's medical something we don't know about that this group has, because clearly they seem very organized, and it definitely looks like a larger community. So we shall see what happens. I agree with you. I honestly thought that he was doomed the minute they sort of sent him out on this thing, especially with his goodbye with Jerry.
Yeah.
But hey, I'm glad he's in it for another season.
Yeah, I mean, I love Kari Payton. So
me too. He's amazing.
Good to just have
I'd love to see
around.
him. I'd love to see him on a lot more than just this, honestly. So, But anyway, so that is it for this particular episode. Any other comments or thoughts about it?
I'm sure I've got a couple more that we haven't managed to get out, but this is enough for now. So, okay. So that wraps up season 10, episode 16, not the finale, as we now know. But we will be back with more Walking Dead as we start our recap and review series on The Walking Dead: The World Beyond, the new spin-off for the YA audience, or we'll find out, starting in about a week or so. So I hope that you can come along for the ride. Also, let us know your thoughts about this season finale. Was Beta's outro too anticlimactic? Are we happy that Maggie's back? Are we happy that Beatrice is gone? Do we believe that walkers just walk off cliffs? I mean, kind of we do. I think we do.
I guess we do. But,
okay.
But in any case, yes, thanks for listening. And if you feel like sending us a note or making a comment on the season finale, send us an email, reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, tweet at us, reanimatedpcast, or you can leave us a note on the site, reanimatedpodcast.com. Cool. And until next time, ciao.
Thank you. Bye.